Hey guys, straight to the fucking point. What's going on, motherfuckers? How you doing? Like I give a shit. Just kidding. Eris walked through the open curtains, and as he passed through them, he could feel the air change. There was something that shifted in his mind as well. He could feel the new presence about him, one that frightened him, but pulled him closer. It was as if he was invited into his own death. Though he could not help but feel that he transcended into a familiar place. One that was always there, perhaps even one that existed for an unmeasurable amount of time. There was a sensation that could have always existed, just like he could have always existed. He could not say why he felt such a way, but it was true, at least in that moment. One of those rare thoughts that come but leave you quickly. And it was then he knew that he walked into his own mind once again. And out before him was the familiar shape. One that was hunched over his desk, poring over crumpled papers and staring, fixated, over the old maps upon the wall. It was like watching a madman from afar piece together some fever-dreamt vision half forgotten. He muttered to himself, words that had little meaning to Eris, at least that moment. Coming, going. ... Seeing and feeling ... Born again and again. They faded in and out, and round they danced in Eris's thoughts. He dared not approach. He was frightened, but as he looked down, he could see his tentative steps inching closer and closer towards the eccentric man. And every step closer he grew larger and larger, until finally the man towered over him like a giant. One that swung around with a whoosh of wind, enough to knock Eris back. The behemoth of a man fixed his eye down onto Eris. He leaned in close as if he was inspecting a bug under his foot. It was then Eris noticed he only had one eye. The other was an empty socket of flesh, though at times it seemed to shimmer in and out, as if the eye would appear, then disappear once again. And something told Eris he did not want to be within that eye's gaze, not if he could help it. "Who comes before me?" said the loud booming voice. "Who stirs in the shadows?" Eris felt as if the being was staring right at him. His heaving breath gusted around him, but when he looked closer into the one eye, he could not see his own reflection. "I am invisible," he thought, and he knew it to be so. When Eris looked over the being's face, it seemed to change at every motion, every twitch of the eye, or wrinkle of the nose, even the twitch of the mouth. It was as if he looked at a different man with every blink of an eye. He did not know if he looked on a god or a monster. Eris waited in the silence between gusts of breath. He did not move lest he be found. The being then shot up and cocked his head to the wall, where his eyes fell on a map, one that Eris could only recognize as Euandra. Though this map held more detail than he had ever seen in one made by Edenian scribes. It was the known world, but there was something quite peculiar about it. Something he could not find words for, yet it tickled some part of his brain in a way he could not grasp. "I've seen this before," he thought, and as the words left him, the giant replied, "You've made it, you fool." Eris gasped audibly, and the giant swung around and scooped him off the floor, bringing Eris to his face. The giant looked him over, inspecting him carefully before uttering, "You've changed quite a bit, haven't you?" "Is that a question?" The word barely shuddered out from his mouth, Eris's mouth. "More of a statement, really." He then placed Eris upon the massive desk and sat before him, his arms down and hands upon his thighs. The giant's posture did not seem threatening, but rather intrigued. The slightly cocked head and small smile was worn bright about him. He looked like he meant no harm to Eris, or at least that was what he told himself. Then he let out a roarless laugh that shook the walls, to finally exclaim, "Do you not remember drinking from the cauldron?" Should I have?" remarked Eris. "I would imagine you should have by this point, though I cannot keep taking you every time." "This will be the last time," Eris found the words leaving him astonishing. It was as if someone else was speaking through him. I need to see it again. The giant looked him over and with a smile said, "Oh, all right, but this is the last time." To which he grasped Eris by the ankle and brought him over the cauldron. He then dunked his head in, to which Eris found a whole other world lying beyond, one that was shimmering at the bottom of the murky cauldron. What the fuck is that? So I sat down and I really thought about that, and I said, well, what? I don't know why. I sat for the typewriter and that came out, and I think to myself, well, that has got to be one of his visions that happens in book 2. Clearly. The cauldron is definitely influenced by my Welsh and Irish mythology kind of readings that I've been doing. So that plays a significant role. And as the interpreting part of within my story, this cauldron being, as I understand it, from aspects of the Celtic mythologies, where it's like the cauldron's the bringer of life. It reanimates. Seemingly, warriors are dunked into it and they're brought back to life, though sometimes they can't speak or other things of that nature. Or it has a plentiful amount of food. So there are these two things, and the waters of life are kind of a sacred thing when it comes to another Celtic mythology thing, where it's like the waters, the springs, and the wells all have this healing factor to them as well. So I don't necessarily know how I can tie that into this as of yet. And I don't know why Eris wanted to, or the part inside of him that he was like, man, something answered in me. Imagine someone asking you a question and you don't know what they're asking you, but a voice comes from within you and answers the question, and you're just like, holy shit. So there's some sort of subconscious part of himself that he can't identify yet, some part of his mind that he cannot see. And there's a lot of exploration inside of this, just this right here. And this is the kind of interesting thing about storytelling. So right here, we have him descending into his own mind. We have him feeling that he needs to go inward. And whether that he did that on purpose or an accident, it just began with he walked through the open curtains. So in some sense, at least he was invited. And when he realized he was within his own mind, he was tentative. And he didn't really necessarily want to explore this, but he felt bravery enough to try. And as he went forward, he saw a being, and one that he didn't necessarily know, like, I don't know, it's just like, something recognized it. And in my understanding, this is us venturing into our own thoughts and trying to explore parts of ourselves that we're familiar with, but we don't have much of an understanding of. And so as he does this, and he tries to hide from this being. Now this giant seems to be some sort of figure inside of his mind, some sort of guardian, something that holds knowledge or holds sacred information, and the one who helps him with the rite of passage, or because the cauldron was mentioned, so something that helps him do this ritualistic thing. So this giant, because you have the one eye, and that usually symbolizes knowledge. But when the voice answers inside of Eris, inside of his mind, it reflects a part of his own subconscious that he is coming to grips with, he's trying to figure out. And it wants to dive in more to a forgotten memory. And that's what Eris has to do. A being inside of him, the multitude of them, this one needs to venture into his own mind so that he can unravel something lost. And there's a lot of, a hero's journey inside of this already. And so I think to myself, what the fuck is beyond? So he wants to do all this stuff. The symbology would be exploring our own depths and exploring our own inner selves and coming to terms with who we are and what's inside of us, and trying to remember what we forgot. Well, in that sense, I would say, Oapake, so God that rides within Eris, that lives inside of him. Eris being a fractal part of the Creator. Eris being a prophet or a conveyor for his Creator. needs to re-explore something for that creator. So the main theme of these stories is forgotten. Not like I forgot it, but everything went away. All memory. And so it's like that amnesia thing, which is a very modern concept we're all really focused on. A lot of video games work with it. The main protagonist will always have like some sort of amnesia. We believe our culture to have an amnesia about, you know, what occurred before the floods and stuff. Like, it's something that's awakening in us. And it's definitely inspired me. But also, it's not necessarily like, oh, a forgotten ancient world that used to exist and Eris has to discover this world. And in my mind, it also reflects ourselves. And there are things that can happen to us. Again, as with this case, it would be the Forgotten King. There were traumas that came to us and shaped us that sometimes we just want to forget about them. Sometimes they go away. But we have to re-explore them. We have to see them again. Sorry, I was being weird. You have to explore the depths inside of yourself of the traumas that came to you and re-explore them and try to solve parts of your subconscious. And a lot of that really focuses in a psychological aspect. You could read Jung. This guy here, his name is Eric Graham Howe, another psychologist of that era. You have Freud. These guys of this era here kind of read into these people so you can kind of get a grasp of what we're trying to accomplish in the story here. But for me, the goal is to, through mythology, through storytelling, help people come to these conclusions. And so if you're thinking about it, you're thinking, oh, okay, like, that's fun. He went to a world and there's a giant who guarded something, and then the giant dunked him into a cauldron, and then Eris found another world inside of it. Like, it's hard for people because we're not trained this anymore, but you can't just look at it like that and go, mm-hmm. You have to look at it deeply. In Irish mythology, there's a salmon of knowledge. And it's just like, what, a fucking fish has knowledge? Well, yeah, because there was a sacred trees that were over the well, and then the acorns would fall in, and the salmon would eat them, and the acorns had the knowledge inside of them. Now the fish does. You can look at that and think, I guess that's cool, but you have to look into it. You have to go deeper into what does that mean. Because that, as I understand it, and as I've been approaching it, mythology is the idea of you have to look through this. You need to basically just not take it at face value. And that's hard in our modern world. That's all we want to do. We just want to be told what to do and how to do it. I don't want to think. I just want to do. We don't remember how to do this shit. And so as my job, I feel like, is to aid that and say, no, you need to start doing shit for yourself. You need to start fucking thinking about the depths of our own mind. It's not this surface level material thing. There's an imaginative world that plays in conjunction with our modern material world. There's a lot going on in the immaterium, I guess you could say, in the grand scope of it all. And you're a fucking part of it. You need to understand that. You're not just sitting there like, well, you know, I don't believe these things. I believe logic. It's like that's not how that works. It's not like, well, if you don't believe it, it doesn't exist. Like, that's ignorant. My thing is I'm trying to teach is you gotta look through this stuff. And so I talk about it in the videos all the time. Every conversation that I have here is stream of consciousness. You know how many fucking times I'm sitting down right before recording going like, what the fuck do I even talk about? I don't even know. And sometimes I want to think like, well, maybe I'll talk about this. I don't know. Or maybe I try to talk about that. Or, I don't know. And every time I try, I fail. I have to give up and abandon the videos. I should save them and show you a collage of the abandoned videos. They're terrible. When I sit down and quiet my mind and just like start speaking and just speak and let things happen, that's the rewarding feeling. And you always witness it. It's always, the beginning's rough. It's like weird, or I'm kind of like, you know, floating around with shit. Like, what's he talking about? Like, he's showing me a picture of a book all of a sudden. Now we're talking about, you know, modern culture or whatever. because you have to kind of, you're tentatively going in. It's like opening a door to the other world, and in that, the first steps you take, you can't grasp it fully. You're just there. You exist. It's like going into a new room. You're going to be like, well, there's walls and there's shit here. Okay, there's some interesting pictures on the walls. Okay, oh, there's a lot of books over there. It's going to take you a minute and oh, wait a minute, this is an office. That's how the stream of consciousness works, and what that's doing for me is I feel like it's opening some sort of like valve, and in that it's just going to let out everything inside of me in real time. Whatever happens to be in focus of this valve now, and then it'll switch away, and then another thing will come in focus, and we have a conversation about something different. That all works in tandem, I believe, with mythology, because as I'm doing my readings of mythology, my studying, and I'm working on my own, the fact is, most of the journey, so in the case of my book, most of the journey of the characters in it is incredibly cerebral. We just put them in places and fantasy elements, and we had some monsters here, we had some swords and sorcery and fun things. But in reality, we have a group of people learning to overcome something. Every character that I've made has a trauma or a mental thing they need to get through, like whether that's a viewpoint or some sort of element that's negatively affecting their lives. But at the same time, I think it's very good to be respectful towards whatever negative aspect there is, because we explore the duality. So we say, like, you have this bad thing about you, and that contrasts this good thing about this character. Here they are together. But we'll go ternary, and we'll say, like, yes, but let's look at the whole sphere of it. Let's look at the balance of this thing. So we can kind of see your negative aspects can influence your positive aspects, and together, if you work through things, your positive looks at your negative to fix it, and then there's another negative, and this positive fixes it. And also this negative can help you see the positive even better. So it's a process. I think that's what the mythology does. I mean, that's what I'm working on it to do, I should say. I mean, it's hard to know when a story is written thousands of years before you were born. There's a lot of context you don't have. But in this little short story, which is a dream segment that Eris will have in book 2, we begin to see the main theme that happens to him all the time, which is I go into my mind, and once I'm in there, it's always a new room, but it's always familiar. And there's always something that happens that catches me off guard, but it's always familiar. It's always like, I don't know, but I feel like this has happened before, but I don't know. Something's familiar, but it's very distant. And that right there lets you know your dreams play a part of this game. Your dreams are incredibly crucial. They are the tool that guides you. Dreams are nuts, man. They really are. I've told some dreams on this channel before. But that is the main thing. So when I explore the mythology, I like with dreams. I always do. There's so many things happening, but my favorite thing, like this, is when dreams help. Because they can tell you so much about yourself. And they are, like, there's truth to them. There's something inside of them that affect you. They're not just fucking replaying images all scrambled together, There's significance to them. Let me give you one example before we go. Oh my God. So this was like maybe a couple weeks ago at the most. I was with some guy. Some faceless guy. He felt similar to the first one that failed that test that happened with the shape-shifting deer. Though with him, we were descending down into a massive cave network. And the deeper down we went, the more intricate the tunnels became. And as I looked around, there were wax candles all over the place, all littered along the sides of the cave wall, placed in areas that were kind of like natural tables or jutting out points that candles can be sat on. And there were carved iconography all over the place, deities and sacred animals and all of this stuff, and there were a lot of offerings. There were flowers scattered all over the place. This was a ceremonial, special place. And we were descending down into it. And it kept going further and further, and I just looked around at these cave walls, all these candles and incense burning and statues and metal figures, of animals or whatever they were everywhere. Then we get to the end, and the tunnel stops suddenly, and then you look out into this expansive, massive opening. And I looked down, and I could not see the ground, but there was a rope bridge that went out to the middle of this massive room. All around the edges of this massive room were crowds and crowds of people, all watching again, all witnessing, seeing. I couldn't tell if they were crowds or if they were all on a pilgrimage in the background. You know what I mean? Because I didn't focus. Like I said, I wasn't in a dream. It's happening, but if you're not directly looking at it, you can't really identify it. So I just knew that they were either moving to some pilgrimage site or watching this event that's about to unfold. I looked out and I saw that the massive rope bridge led to kind of a jutting up of a bit of land out there. And on it was a massive statue. Out beyond the bridge lay a massive statue on its own little piece of land. Forgive me, I don't know geography, so I couldn't tell you. It's a plateau within the mist of the abyss. And the massive statue kind of felt like, I wish I could tell you what it looked like, but it was clearly like a white guy that kind of looked Buddha-like. You know what I mean? Like he's in some sort of pose. I don't know. But it was a massive statue, and there was clothing on him. At least there was a sash, as far as I could recall. But the weird thing was, I knew there was a being inside of that statue. There was something in it. And as I approached, the guy behind me, this figure that I could identify, tapped me on the shoulder, and I just came to a realization. I'm sorry. I'll talk about it in a minute. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You forgot. You forgot." And I was like, "Oh shit, I did." I ran back. I said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry," and I ran back. And I ran through the tunnels, and the first small effigy that I saw, iconography or whatever it was a statue of a golden dog. It kind of looked like a dog. It might have been like Egyptian-y, but I couldn't tell. And I grabbed it, I'm like, okay, here we go. And I ran out because I knew, I'm like, you didn't bring an offering. That's not good. And I was like, fuck. I came back, I was like, I apologize. I approached the statue and I had the dog and I placed it in front of him. And the being inside, I don't know if he spoke out loud or if I only heard him in my mind. I couldn't tell you. But I know he was kind of like, good, But that was a grave mistake that you just made there, and for that you shall be punished. Now this is going to sound really fucking weird, but this is hand to God truth. I'm sorry. It was so weird. He's like, as punishment, I'm going to make you void yourself. I was like, oh, geez. Void myself. But I knew in my mind that means I'm going to shit myself. I'm going to have diarrhea. I don't know why. I'm like, okay. Then I woke up. I was like, oh, that's a weird fucking dream. Anyway, whatever. And then I got ready, went to work, and then as soon as I got there, I had to shit. Went to the bathroom, and what happened? Exactly what that God said happened. I hate that I have to talk about like this or whatever. I basically diarrhea at work. Like that being said. And as I was doing it, I was like, oh, shit, yeah, he punished me. And I didn't feel sick before, and I didn't feel sick after, and everything went back to normal. It was just one moment of just water, and all of a sudden, like, whoa. And then I went about my day. But I thought about him. And I was like, oh my God. That happened. He said it was going to happen, and it fucking happened. So I dwelled on it. I was like, is that like some sort of sacred part of my body that's saying, quit eating junk food, I'm going to avoid it from you as a punishment? You're not being sacred to your body. Is it deeper than that? Is it some other level of understanding where it's like, you know, the dream I truly accessed was another realm? It's hard to really say. But before I leave this video, this ramble of a video, I do want to say I think that being of shadow, I think this guy that's always with me might be one of my guardian angels, one of my conveyors. One that was a man in the mortal plane, but now he's like a spirit guiding me. I just realized that. Oh, I gotta think about that for a while. That might make me a little bit upset. Huh. I almost felt like crying when I realized that. I was like, oh my God. Whew, okay, so that's all gonna go in the book, don't you worry. To myself. This being, I think I know who he is. He's Ravian, man. God damn it. Holy shit, it just dawns on me. It really does. It's insane how that works. My point being that dreams help you, and they're there for you, and they guide you. And sometimes these are the same thing when it comes to reading mythology. This was a character having a dream, but it was a dream nonetheless, and there was some significance to it. Something that guides you. It's beyond, it's in a story, but when a character is giving you a dream, they're giving you some sort of mythology, they're giving you an understanding that's baseless, in the sense of like, you know, giants don't grow out of nowhere, and you know, how mythologies are, like they read almost dreamlike. They're like, this is weird, like there's no material ground here. It's because those are dream states that are being explored, and you have to read into it. And through that reading into it, it can happen in the physical realm, where you are accessing some other place that has something there for you, and you need to unlock it. All around you exists for a reason. It has to. There is no accident. Whatever you stumble upon, even if it's this fucking video, it's on purpose. You have to hear this because you need to do something further. That I know. But anyway, we should get going. And we will venture forth, sally forth into our next adventure. And we will talk to you next week.